Welcome back, everyone. This is Sandra Rowe, the CEO of the GBBC, and I am delighted, honored to be able to make the next introduction, our keynote speaker, Superintendent Linda Lacewell. Before I hand over to her, I'd like to just give a little bit of background here. Linda A. Lacewell is the third superintendent of the New York State Department of Financial Services. DFS supervises the activities of nearly 1,500 banking and other financial institutions with assets of more than $2.6 trillion and more than 1,800 insurance companies with assets of more than $4.7 trillion. Let those numbers sink in a bit. A member of Governor Andrew Cuomo's cabinet, Superintendent Lacewell has dedicated her career to serving the public. Since taking office in 2019, Superintendent Lacewell has strengthened DFS's reputation as a national leader in consumer protection, appointing the department's first consumer advocate and consumer protection task force. She's also protected student loan borrowers, launching a step-up program for students initiative, licensing student loan servicers, and introducing a student loan borrower's bill of rights. She's also supported innovation and strengthened cybersecurity in the financial services industry by creating research and innovation and cybersecurity divisions at the department. She's championed financial inclusion and diversity, bringing back bank branches into underserved areas across New York State, creating a committee to promote women leadership in financial services, and hiring a diverse and talented leadership team. She's fostered cooperation and collaboration with the department's international counterparts to safeguard the global financial system and committed to fighting climate change. She's contributed to New York's progressive achievements by helping codify the Affordable Care Act and Mental Health Parity and Addition Act in New York State law. She has been a top advisor to the governor, a staunch advocate for economic justice, a tenacious prosecutor of wrongdoing, and a champion of women's rights and representation. And finally, on a personal note, having sat through the pandemic in New York City itself, I will especially say that watching the leadership of Governor Cuomo as well as Superintendent Linda Lacewell has showed me that leadership does matter. We all need to do our part, but what New York State has done is something that should be lauded as well as replicated in other places. And with that, I'm very proud to hand over to Linda Lacewell, Superintendent Linda Lacewell, to say a few words.
Sandra, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you to the GBBC. Greetings from New York City on your two-day journey around the world. The most important stop, I'm sure you would agree, the center of finance, the center of innovation, the center of immigration. People come here from all over the world seeking a better life, the American dream, a better future for their families, and that is what makes us unique. I'm actually speaking to you from my office downtown in the financial district overlooking the Statue of Liberty, which inspires me every single day to do my part to help make this a better place for everyone. Now, of course, during the pandemic, we all have to socially distance, they say, but I don't call it social distance. It's physical difference. Yes, we are reducing our carbon footprint by not being here in New York at UNGA and by doing this remotely, but nobody could say that we are not more socially connected than ever. And that's why this event is so important, to reconnect and to continue to connect on these matters of importance. DFS, as you know, we're banking, we're insurance, we're all kinds of financial products, fintech, a little thing called crypto, blockchain, virtual currency. And our purview is so broad, and we have many, many opportunities to be helpful. And there are so many opportunities writ large because there's so much work to be done. As you know, we were facing a series of crises, the first being the pandemic, the public health pandemic. And for me, it started March 1st. I was actually in London. Hello, London. And I was there to meet with fintech leaders, industry, City of London regulators, and others, and scheduled to meet with Andrew Bailey, who was then the incoming chair for the Bank of England. Very excited about that meeting. I was there for about a day. My phone started blowing up with all these calls coming from the governor's office. Where are you? We've got a problem. We're getting everybody together, and we need you to get up to Albany, like now. So I literally, the next flight was 3 o'clock in the morning out of Gatwick, of all places, that paragon of aviation matters, and got on some airline, I don't even know who it was, whatever was next, and flew directly to JFK, Kennedy Airport in Queens, and then a car up to Albany immediately into the governor's office with a core team of people, where every day we battled this pandemic, which was not easy, right? Not easy on a personal level because the unknown, the impact on real people, the infections, the hospitalizations, the deaths, it was harrowing and it was frightening. And yet you have to hold yourself together and you've got to help. How do you even know what you're facing? How many infections are there going to be? How many people are going to end up in hospitals? Who's going to be in the ICU? How many people are going to need ventilators? And do we have enough? Do we have enough hospital beds? Do we have enough doctors, nurses, all kinds of other staffers, the heroes of the healthcare system? What are the models for what this is going to look like so that we know what we need to mitigate and manage? That required numbers, data, models, the building blocks of innovation, because we're starting from zero, because we, like everyone else, we were not prepared. And we had to deal with this on the fly. Getting through that, going up, as the governor says, that side of the mountain, and then coming down on the other side was really an extraordinary experience. And it is because of the people that it was successful, of course, for New York, where we now have about a 1% infection rate, although everyone is being very vigilant about potential second waves with going back to school and things of the like. But that's the first crisis, right? Leading to the second crisis, which is the economic crisis, not the fault of the people. To fight the pandemic, everybody had to go home and shut the door and stay there. So you can't go to work. Businesses don't make money. They lay people off. People lose their jobs. They can't pay their rent, their mortgage, feed their family. And so a whole panoply of services were needed for people, the primary one of which was getting money to them. And you all saw, for those of you who were watching the American system, how it was very difficult to get unemployment benefits out to people quickly. It was hard for the federal government to get money out to people quickly. Those payment systems and those ways of identifying and sending the right amount of money to people quickly so that they can use it, those all need to be overhauled. And you guys know this better than I do. We need more innovation to tackle all of these problems. And of course, we have a third crisis, one that has been brewing for a long time and that is not new. It just has become more visible with more people out in the streets and the cry for racial justice, economic justice, which for this country goes back 100 years to the original sin. And unfortunately, and what many people don't realize is that communities of color were excluded at the beginning, were not given any help to start on their way, like many other populations, including immigrant populations, by the way, including Army personnel with the GI Bill, not set on their way, not participating in the wealth of this great country. Black people, 10 to 13% of the population in this country, about 1.5% of the wealth, a couple percentage points of the wealth, which has been true for at least 50, 60 years. Why hasn't that changed as the wealth has grown? A lack of participation in the financial system, a lack of opportunity, an exclusion, a pushing out. No, you may not enter here. And then, adding insult to injury, selling the worst garbage products and services of the financial system, predatory lending, usurious interest rates, that only drive the disenfranchised, the underserved further into debt. And it's an abomination. It's a disgrace. And we've got to do something about it. And we've got to address goal 10, reduced inequality, is critical. It has always been critical, is more critical than it has ever been. DFS is doing its part, and the pandemic exposed and widened the chasm between rich and poor, middle class and the excluded, and the unbanked, the banked, the underbanked, the included and the excluded. And we've got to address it. We've got to address it, and we cannot waste the energy of people in the streets in this country and around the world saying enough is enough. And at DFS, we're building a statewide Office of Financial Inclusion, which, by the way, that plan predated this trio of crises. And we're fighting against predatory lending, redlining, and all the other abomination of practices. We are pushing for diversity, and we will engage with our licensed entities about what their diversity is in the C-suite and in the board of directors, because guess what? Diversity and inclusion is not just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do, as if we didn't know. The studies all show now, if you want to innovate, be diverse. You need diversity around the board table, you need diversity in the executive suite. We need, as Chris Brummer rightly says, diverse leaders all across the board, owners, operators, engagers, within government, at all levels, and within industry, including innovation. I believe this very strongly, I always have. Happens to be my mother was born in India. She's an immigrant to this country through the United Kingdom. I have always embraced and been seeking out friends of diversity, right? And in New York, we like to think others are threatened by diversity, certain people in Washington, D.C. We embrace it because we know it makes us stronger and richer and more resilient and more creative and more effective at building a better world. And we've got to do it now because we've got to build back better. We've got to build back. We can't just replace what came before. We don't want to get back to where we were pre-pandemic. That is just a baseline. If nothing else, this pandemic has shown us how connected we really all are. And the recovery will not be the recovery unless everybody's included. In the United States, that means Democratic states, Republican states. It means rural, urban. It means suburban. It means Black, white, brown, Latinx, LGBTQ, Asian, everybody. It means the poor, the middle class, those who are excluded. Because what we see is when a crisis comes along and kicks us, then if you're not already resilient, then you suffer worse. So Black people, Latinx were adversely affected by the pandemic, more so than others who were already strong and resilient. And we've got to remember for New York, and you could apply this in your state or your country as well, we are the family of New York. We are one people. When one of us is lifted, we're all lifted. And when one of us is down, we are all down. And we've got to remember how connected we really are. And that includes for the innovators. I call to service the innovators and I say, what are you innovating and what is the product or service or solution that you are bringing to the world? Because there are many ways to serve and you don't have to just be in government. What are you doing to help people on any one of these crises? And at DFS, through our efforts called New York DFS Next and DFS Fast Forward, where you can come and have a dialogue with us to help you move forward with your business and your product or service and innovation, whether it's fintech, insurtech, and so forth. What are you doing? Are you just creating another app for wealth management tool for people to put on their phone? Or are you doing something about public health, telehealth? Are you doing something about household financial stability and security and payment systems? And within that, particularly to elevate and raise the inclusion of communities of color. Are you doing something for small business, which is the backbone of the economy and generates jobs for everybody? Those are our priorities, and you will get our direct attention, particularly if that is a focus of what you are doing. And I would say further, microinsurance, microfinance, all these tools that this country has developed and incorporated throughout the world we need to do it here. We have poverty here. We have the Bronx. We have pockets of serious poverty, upstate New York, and obviously in other parts of the country. Let's apply these tools ourselves to our people, to our economies, to our communities, and elevate everyone. So here's what I would say to you in closing. Yes, New York, and particularly New York City, took a punch. There is no question about it. But we got back up off the mat, because that's what we do. We always rise again and stand up and fight our way to a better future. And that's what we will do. And those who count us out are mistaken. The clouds may have been dark and thunderous and threatening, but for us in New York, that is abating, and it will never scare us, and it will never intimidate us, because we will move forward. We can and will meet the challenges ahead, because that's who we are. We are New York, and New York is the world. New York is you and us. That's our composition. That's the immigration of our strong communities. We are New York. New York is the world. You are New York. And as our great governor, Andrew Cuomo, and many of you may have seen him with his PowerPoint presentations every single day during this pandemic, said, we're going to get through it together. Why? Because we are New York tough, smart, united, disciplined, and loving. So wear a mask to protect each other and be safe. And thank you so much for this invitation. Enjoy your journey. Thank you.